Hey everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this workshop. Uh, this is again a PUP edition workshop for journalism here at East Los Angeles College. The workshop is going to be covering features here. This is the next kind of section on how to write them. A lot of the stuff that was in the news workshop at the very beginning here of this list of workshops um, is kind of the crux of what we're going to be doing here. So I'm not going to I'm not going to try to be too repetitive when it comes to some of these things. In case, for example, you have already watched the news workshop, I will go over these couple of things very quickly. So these next couple of workshops won't be as lengthy as the first or the news one, which contains a lot of what we need to do just in general when it comes to writing a piece. So let's go ahead and begin. Covering a feature. As many of you probably know, or or have read in your book covered with the professor, or have come and spoken to me during a tutoring session. Features are kind of evergreen. They're the kind of stories that we can place today, tomorrow, and a year from now, in general, that will always resonate with people. A good feature focuses on a specific thing that is not news. So a professor being fired for misconduct is news. A club doing or adding something that they plan on doing something every month, for example, a food drive or a clothing drive, that's more of a feature. It may start off as a news piece, but if you decide to cover it, maybe after it being around for 2-3 months, it becomes a feature because it is something that will be consistently happening on and on. So, so I guess when it comes to what is a feature, I guess we can say what is a feature, right? We can simply say something as simple as a story that is typically, sorry, that's my tummy, evergreen. And what does that mean? It can be used today, tomorrow, 2 months from now. Okay, that's what these stories are about. So feature profiles, feature stories. For an example would be not a feature would be not a feature would be a professor being fired. That's not a feature. That's a news piece. Okay. A feature would be, and you probably saw that pop up there. That's from one of our writers here at Campus News. A PUP EIC. A feature would be a piece on, not a piece specifically, but maybe more like a retrospective on a 30-year veteran professor. So that would be a feature, because you assume that if he's been on campus for 30 years, he'll probably be there another 5. So if you write it today, someone in 2 years, 3 years will read it and they say, man, that professor sounds really cool. Let me see if he's still around. And that person may be lucky and still find that professor. We've had professors that have been around for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. professors who have been here for much longer. So again, that is more of a feature. These are just examples really quickly. Covering them works very similarly to any kind of news piece. You're going to do the same exact of things here as well. So if you guys remember when we talked about the news piece, one of the major things we want to do is we want to do research, right? So before writing, we do what? Research. So first, do the research. Now, for something like this, it does have a little bit of a difference, but again, very similar to a news piece. So in this situation, we want to talk to the main person if we're interviewing a person, or organizer if we're talking about a organization or a function or something that has, the 17th annual or the sociology club, whatever, or for example, we just had this just recently, we've had the chance to do a Husky Bowl. Husky Bowl has been around for a couple of years. This covering the Husky Bowl would be a feature because you would want to talk about it as a whole, and you could definitely pitch it as a news story, but it would typically be more of a feature because you would talk about how maybe it's changed, how it's kind of done, what it actually is for. The news part of it may be who won the Husky Bowl that year. Pardon me, I think it's semester-wise, so maybe that semester, I'm not sure. Again, something that you would find out in research. From there, you would want to talk to those surrounding the main subject. So in the example of a specific person, that professor we're talking about maybe that's been here for 30 years, or the person who puts on the Huskies suit for sporting events, you want to talk to the teammates. You want to talk to fellow professors, right? If it's a professor, if it's a sports member, fellow teammates, right? You want to talk to them, ask them questions. Hey, what's this guy like? How do you get into this? What's it been like having him on the team? What's it been like having him as a fellow professor? Talk to previous students. Talk to their parents, especially if it's a student. Talk to their parents. If it's a feature on an event, talk to the people who started the event. The very first event, the very first time. See if you can find those people. Ask them how it's changed or if they're still a part of it. Talk to people who are running the event currently. All of that stuff is very, very important to cover. Go to the event, cover the event, see what happens at the event. The outcome may be a news piece, but the retrospective on what it is entirely, it's past, it's present, it's future, that's a feature. So this is all before you actually start the writing. So do your research. Do the research. It's super important. Okay? And like I said, if it's an event, if it's like some kind of a club event or something that happens every year, or a sporting event, obviously attend the event if applicable. It'll help kind of give you a more rounded idea of what the event is like. If it's an event, if it's a person, we already covered that by talking to the main person. Ask them questions about their past, about their story, about what they're doing, about why they're still there. If it's an event, attend the event. Talk to people that are there and how they feel about the event, what they love about the event. Make sure to take note of the multiple types of things that happen at the event. Ask the people who organized it, how they came up with those things. Ask the people who started it way back when. What event did it first have? I think the original Husky Bowl had a couple, only like 2 or 3 things. Now it has like 5 or 6. They've added events, or they change them every couple of months or every couple of semesters. It's always important to see how it started and where it went. Okay, the lead. Typically on features, you have a little more leeway on how you want to construct your lead. It's not a news piece, so you don't have to hammer home the main piece of information right away. But if there's something really important about why you're covering this for your feature, then that goes in your lead. Okay? So, in a way, for leads, okay? You have a little more leadway for leads in this one. Still, despite that, despite having a little more leeway, pardon me, try to find the most important thing and make it a part of the lead. Okay? For example, let's say the professor you're speaking to, okay? Let's say the professor you're speaking to, it's a feature on him, but somewhere in your interview, he tells you he plans on retiring this year. You're like, oh, well, that sucks. This feature's not going to be that great anymore, because if anyone reads it, they're never going to know about they're never going to be able to take any of these classes. That's where your brain has to go into a new gear and try to figure out what your lead is going to be now. Let's say he talks a lot about the fact that that he doesn't have kids, and that his real legacy is going to be his students. Then that's your lead. Maybe you decide, okay, well, maybe Professor what's his name, or Professor so and so is being a 30-year veteran at ELAC and continues to want to be a teacher, is not going to be my lead anymore. Maybe it's something along the lines of something as simple as, Professor so-and-so has left a fingerprint on every single life he has had over his 30 years, every student's life that he has had influence on over his 30 years of being a professor, and plans to work in maybe the fact that he's going to retire. That's the main thing. So retiring Professor so-and-so has left an indelible fingerprint on every single student he has had since he started at East Los Angeles College, and they are his true and he says they are his true legacy. There you go. You have a lead now for your piece. It may not be the one that you thought it was, but the simple idea of legacy will let people know, hey, you know what? I can't maybe get in contact with the professor, but this reporter, he wrote in 2, 3, 4 students talked about how he affected their lives. These other professors who are younger talk about how he affected their lives and their teaching style. Maybe I can learn a little bit about him through them. It's still a feature piece, but it becomes more of a feature piece on a professor's lasting impact on the lives of those around him. Not the feature piece you originally wanted, but the feature piece you got, right? To take a line from Batman movie. So, again, I'm going to go really quickly over attribution because we need it. I want to make sure I talk about it in every single one that deals with it, but with every single story style that we talk about. But again, here we go. I should probably do an entire workshop on this. So, number one, or pardon me, most important thing here, we need names, titles of anyone interviewed. We need it. That's just, that's just the number one thing we need. You need to have the names and titles of anyone interviewed. Because even though, even though the fact that feature is a little bit different, and we'll go into how it's different in a second here. I'm trying to cover the basic stuff, the more important basic stuff. You still need to be able to tell who said what and when. And again, this is specifically the reason why. Why do this? Again, just so we understand. A reporter, journalist, however you want to write, whatever you think you want to put here for you, the writer, is not the authority on anything involving the topic, okay? So a reporter or journalist, a novelist, a writer, whatever you want to say, is not an authority on anything that they're writing about. They are reporting a piece of information to someone else. So keep that in mind, please. Structure-wise, the a feature is a little bit different. Again, you have a little more leeway here. Normally, a news, we are trying to give the most important info up front, right? Again, i.e., inverted pyramid. In features, it's similar. It's similar, but we don't necessarily write it at all like news. Why? Because in this version, in this type of article, okay, so let me highlight this because in features, this is what we're talking about, okay. So first, right, just as a looking back, kind of, in news we try to give everything. We try to give the most important information up front. That's why we use the inverted pyramid. In features, it's similar, but we don't necessarily write it like news. We're still looking for the most important information. We're still trying to make sure that gets into our article, but we are kind of flexing our story muscle, or I guess flexing our writing muscle. So we don't have to follow. We're not gonna follow the inverted pyramid to the T like a rabid dog. There's different ways to write features. Mostly what we try to do is we try to talk about the person or the event or the project or whatever. We try to talk about it in a way where we kind of give information about the more important stuff up front, yes. But then we can kind of write a story, like actually flex our muscle, write about things in a way that makes sense, in a way that might be counterintuitive to news writing typically. So, you may want to start off with the fact that, that let's go back to this professor. We already wrote the lead. His life and his idea of him being a professor has touched the life of many different students. That's super important. And then you say, okay, so do I start talking about the students right after that, or how do I do that? You may want to go right into a anecdote from a student. Hey, you know what? Joe Jackson said that, not Joe, that's an actual person, but let's say, for example, John Smith said Professor so-and-so was one of the reasons he was able to get out of ELAC at all. And then you tell a little story about what his life was like. So this may be telling a story that's 20 years old. So you say, well, that's not the most important piece of information. That's old. Well, yeah, but it's showing and covering and backing up what you talked about at the beginning. This isn't a biography. You're not writing this professor's life story from the very beginning. You are trying to infuse this article, this feature, with more than news. This article has feeling. This doesn't mean you forget everything. This doesn't mean you forget how you write news stories. No. This doesn't mean that you just start writing, oh, he was such a nice, lovely man, and he was so great, and it's all that. No. Make sure you put content and information that is factual. Make sure that you put content and information that you can attribute. Make sure the content and information is something that would back your lead up, give more detail, give more information on your actual lead. That is always the main thing to think about. Now, again, this is a little bit of a shorter kind of workshop. There are tons of different types of features, tons of different types of ways of writing them. Just remember that this is a chance to kind of actually, if you come from English, if you come from writing novels or writing short stories or writing essays and that kind of deal, this is kind of where you use a little bit of that mentality, not the style, but the mentality. You want to tell a story that will be impactful about this specific person, this specific event, this specific thing, so that people will remember it. So that in 5 years, if you write a good story about this professor, he may pass away. They may look back and say, you know what, this previous feature or this previous piece on how he was a great resource for me to be able to talk and explain what kind of professor this was. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it here. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this workshop. I know it's a lot shorter than the first one. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the 2 pages again really slowly here as I go over the last couple of things. Remember, a feature is it's typically evergreen. It's something that you can use today or tomorrow or a week or 2 weeks from now. A professor being fired, a car crashing, a new, the English department, closing. Those are all news stories. Those are not features. A feature would be a look back at the first set of a look back at the library. Okay, I look back at the library. Who started the library? What were its humble beginnings? Where is it now? There's your feature. Doing the research is imperative. I'm going to talk about this in every single version of this type of workshop. Do the research ahead of time. Know a lot of the ins and outs, names, titles, dates, that kind of deal. Talk to the people. Talk to the main person. Talk to the main organization, the organizers. Talk to those around them. Talk to those that would have information, stories, people that will be able to substantiate the things that they said about the person or what the person said about themselves or what the people organizer said about the organization. Again, leads, remember, you have a little more leeway for this lead. You don't have to hit people over the head with the most, like just say, hey, 5 people died today. No, you have a chance to, again, make it a little more interesting, a little more feeling, but make sure the most important part of it is in the lead. So again, if the professor is retiring, make sure that the professor, you mention that in the lead. Okay? If you're covering an event and they are planning on making it instead of annually, they're going to do it biannually, they're going to do it twice a year, that goes in your lead. The Husky Bowl has been annual since 2018. Is an annual event that has happened since 2018 and will now become a biannual event because to better service East Los Angeles college students, their clubs, and school spirit. Something like that. Attribution, we went over this in the news piece. I'll just go over this really quickly again because I hope you're watching all of these. Attribution, names, dates, information. Someone has to have said it. Ask them, get their information, write it down, attribute things to them. So-and-so said this, not just, the person is this kind of person. No, so-and-so said that the person is this kind of person. My observation is important. I'm a reporter. What someone told me I'm reporting to someone else is important. Now, in a feature, you do get a little more leeway, again, like we talked about. Structure-wise, I mentioned here again that the inverted pyramid is how we do news stories, but in features, it's similar, but not necessarily exactly written the same way. You're trying to put more feeling in this. So we are loading it with facts and information, but we're not loading it up with a bunch of dry information that typically goes for a news piece, which is, bam, 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 bam. Okay, this is the least important thing. Here, everything kind of has an importance and kind of builds on what your story is going to be about. And it gives it more of a fleshy idea, more of a feeling idea. All right, well, that's pretty much it for this, guys. I hope you are sticking around, and we'll watch the next one.